Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of RPG Radio. My name is Winback, and on today's episode of Grimdawn, we've got one of the tankiest casters in the game that you can play. This build focuses on Aether damage, lifesteal, and an invincibility button on a cooldown so short it can't ride a single thing at your local creepy traveling carnival. As always, the Grim Tools link is down below with all of the specifics on the build as it is right now, so do yourself a favor and check that out if you need something to copy and paste, but otherwise, sit down, get yourself cozy, and let's talk about what it means to make a Spellbinder. Your Spellbinder class is going to be a combination of your Arcanist and your Necromancer class. So, the class that can reach into the great beyond, raise things from the dead, and use your soul as a pure source of power is just going to get crammed into the teeny tiny little box full of rampant ambition and disregard for human life in the pursuit of knowledge and magic. I know, one of those sounds really cool and the other one sounds like it's trapped in a closet at Hogwarts somewhere. But let's talk about abilities because we have got a lot to cover. You're going to be picking up your Necromancer class first because obviously cool things always come before lame things. And we're actually going to get the ability that we want to focus on for this build right from the get-go. The Necromancer class gives you access to the Drain Essence ability, which is a channeled ability that will be dealing damage as you hold the button down. And I realize the irony because the Arcanist class has the Aether Ray, but stick with me here, they're very different, and this one is way cooler. Drain Essence is going to be dealing Aether damage and Vitality Decay damage. On top of that, it is going to be giving you 10% of attack damage converted to health every time that it deals damage. That is ultimately the whole use of the Vampire Beam when it comes to this class. You'll be tanking tons and tons and tons of damage, but you will be regenerating so much of it so often that it is almost impossible to be killed as long as you have enough energy to be consistently firing off this ability. The modifier that you'll take for it first is called Hungering Reach, and this is going to give the ability the opportunity to chain up to 5 targets. The target meter area is going to increase as well, and is going to tack on even more attack damage converted to health. So, with that being said, your Vampire Beam gets even more lifestealy, and with Hungering Reach, you're also going to be increasing the amount of crit damage that this ability does. It needs to deal more damage because more damage means more healing, and that isn't a hard concept for anyone to understand, I hope. Your final modifier for this ability though is called Decomposition, and this is going to add in some flat vitality damage with buffed Vitality Decay and Vitality Decay increase in duration. So basically your Vitality Decay damage is going to be dealing more damage over a longer period of time, and this is going to allow the ability to reduce the target's offensive ability by a big amount for about 3 seconds. The reason that reduction in offensive ability is important is because the less damage that the enemies can do to you, the harder it is going to be for them to get through your ability to lifesteal off of them in their entirety. The only boss that I've had problems with so far in the game is Lokar, and this build was actually the first build that I used to kill Lokar, but since he's a celestial boss, he's obviously built to be incredibly difficult, and standing there face tanking him isn't really an option, no matter how tanky you can get with your build. Now, super boss tangent aside, there are other abilities on the Necromancer tree that you're going to want to pick up, and there is a reason for that, because a lot of these are going to work in tandem with the gear set that we need to farm later on in the game. That being said, your next ability is going to be Siphon Souls and its modifier Blood Boil, along with the single point modifier called Seer Souls. Now, that's a whole bunch of information, so let's break it down. Siphon Souls is the big AoE ability. You're going to see my character shooting out every couple of seconds. It is a massive AoE with enough points into this ability, and we are going to be lifestealing on yet another button. Now, with your Drain Essence, with just those two modifiers, we're up to about, in this build in particular, about 19% lifesteal while that bad boy is going. When we're using Siphon Souls, we've got about 24% lifesteal every time that we use this ability. That being said, Siphon Souls hits in a much larger AoE in a single press of the button, but it will also be dealing some vitality decay damage when we pick up Blood Boil. That is going to basically allow the ability to continue absorbing health from the enemies because we're getting a percentage of that vitality decay damage per second back. Not only that, but Siphon Souls is going to decrease the health regen of all the bad guys that it hits by almost 100%. We're about 80% right now, which is pretty crazy considering what a huge AoE this ability comes with. And finally, the 1-point modifier called Seer Souls is going to add a 3-second duration of negative 10% damage to everybody that gets hit by this thing, and it is going to convert 100% of the vitality damage in our Siphon Souls into Aether damage. Now, Aether damage is going to be the main damage type for this build, and that is going to couple extremely well with our Arcanist counterpart, but just remember to take that thing early. On top of that though, Blood Boil, I forgot to mention, is also going to be reducing offensive ability of the enemies that it hits. So just like Drain Essence, those enemies are going to have a harder time hitting us, meaning that even if they do manage to deal damage, we'll still have probably more than enough lifesteal to compensate for any damage that they can do if they even manage to hit us at all. Now, those are the biggest two abilities that you're going to want to max for this side of the Spellbinder tree, but there are other things in the Necromancer class that we're going to need, and that is namely Harbinger of Souls, Mark of Torment, and the passive Spectral Binding along with its modifier Spectral Wrath. Each of these will continue to help your class deal damage and survive in their own ways. Obviously, Harbinger of Souls being an exclusive skill can only be selected without the exclusive skill on the Arcanist side of things as well. So we'll pick that one up for the vitality damage, the increase to our lifesteal component, and the attack speed along with the casting speed. Casting speed is going to be very good for this build, but that is pretty evident, I think. You just want to be able to cast your abilities as fast as you can do that, because getting your health back quickly is important. Other than that, your Spectral Binding is going to be mostly reducing the resistances to your damage types on the enemies that are near us. It's also going to be dealing some flat vitality and Aether damage, but you're going to get a big chunk of health out of it, as well as offensive ability too. Really incredible passive for the Necromancer class, and I would highly recommend it even if you are not playing Arcanist for your secondary class. If you have anything that uses Aether damage, this is a great passive. And then lastly, Mark of Torment is essentially going to give you a shield, give you a whole bunch of reflected damage for whoever you link the Mark of Torment to. Basically, you'll slap the Mark of Torment on your big, bad, resistant enemies, and while you're taking damage from everyone, you'll start reflecting that back to those big boys to take even more. On the Arcanist tree, there are a total of 3 abilities that will be incredibly important, and the first one that I'm going to mention is one that I don't often talk about very much. I will tell you every time that you play Arcanist you should be taking this button, but we never really go into much detail about it. The reason it's so important for this build is because we can reduce the cooldown on it incredibly far. So that is the Mirror of Arioctes. This is a 3-second duration of 100% damage absorption. Nothing can deal damage to you, and you're going to be dealing some lightning retaliation damage while it is up. You're going to put as many points into this ability as you possibly can so that you can get the lowest cooldown on it that you can as well. And then when we get the devotions going, we're going to be able to reduce the cooldown of 24 seconds to under 10, which is crazy given that this is a complete invincibility button. The first damage option on our Arcanist tree, though, is going to be Kalidor's Tempest, and this is dealing fire and aether damage, with the focus on our side being towards the aether damage. You're also going to pick up the Wrath of Agravix, which will change this ability to a longer cooldown, modify its damage, which is increasing its damage by 170%, and it is going to allow you to knock down targets for 1.5 seconds. This is an incredibly strong button for getting enemies away from you, stopping them from dealing damage so that you have a big area to lifesteal on. The last ability that you're going to take is Devastation, and Devastation requires a caster offhand, which isn't anything that we need to worry about because the set that we're taking comes with a caster offhand requirement as well. That being said, Devastation is a huge rain of meteors that will pelt a single area on the map that you are currently engaging in, raining aether and fire damage all around you. We're also going to equip one of our devotions to this, and that is going to be Aeon's Hourglass. Now, we're not going to deep dive into the devotions right this second, but remember, you're building out towards Aeon's Hourglass and Revenant for some big damage opportunities and cooldown resets for this build. Back to our Arcanist tree, though, because we do need to still talk about the Maven's Sphere of Protection, along with the conversion modifier that comes with it. You're going to be absorbing energy from enemy spells, which is super important because this build is insanely energy heavy. But I can't go getting distracted by the rest of the Arcanist tree because reasons. So I will leave you with the Inner Focus. You'll need points into that, and you'll need points into Mental Alacrity, along with your Maven's Sphere of Protection. That in and of itself is going to cover everything that you'll need from the Arcanist tree, which admittedly is probably about 40% of what goes on in this build. Now, I do want to talk about devotions because the big three that we need are very important to the build. Your first, which I mentioned, is Aeon's Hourglass, and we're going to want this because of the time dilation ability that comes with it. You have a 20% chance when using this after you've bound it to Devastation to activate, and this means that when you activate Devastation, because it hits so often, you're going to get 6 seconds off of all of your currently active skill cooldowns, which means you're going to press your Siphon Souls, Kalidor's Tempest, and Mirror of Arioctes, and then you are going to want to let your Devastation go so you can get those cooldowns reset faster. After that, you'll pick up Raise the Dead, which comes with the Revenant devotion, and these are going to be raised by your Drain Essence ability. Because Drain Essence hits multiple targets and hits very often, you will have skeletons up all the time, and these skeletons are invincible. They live for 20 seconds, and they will shred the resistances of the targets that they hit for 1 second. Considering that they hit very often, they are going to make your life a lot easier when it comes to dealing damage. And then lastly, Wendigo's Mark, a 15% chance on attack when bound to Siphon Souls, is going to give you a flat vitality damage duration of 10 seconds, and you are going to turn that 65% of that damage into health. Being that we're playing a lifesteal tank caster, I mean, the lifesteal ability from the lifesteal devotion seems like a no-brainer, I think, but, you know, there you have it. Those 3 devotions are incredibly important, and keeping you alive is some of their biggest job. Now, the gear for this build is also very, very important, so let me just talk about the set real quick before we close this down. Ouroboros' Visage is your helmet, Ouroboros' Effigy is your caster offhand, the mantle are going to be your shoulders, and the robes are going to round out Ouroboros' guise for the build. I almost forgot about the necklace, which is the eye. This set of items is going to do a whole lot for your Siphon Souls and your Drain Essence, while giving you the skill called Bone Barrier, which is going to be a very large shield for your physical, vitality, and aether damage types. Not only that, but the necklace is going to increase the duration of Siphon Souls while adding aether damage. Your helmet is going to add aether damage to Drain Essence, increasing its crit damage as well, and giving you 0.8 seconds of Terrify Retaliation to Spectral Binding. You may have noticed a couple times during this video that enemies just go fleeing in fear pretty often, and this set is responsible for a good chunk of that. Your offhand, your Ouroboros Effigy, is going to add another 6% of attack damage converted to health to Drain Essence, making the Vampire Beam even more life-stealy, and it also gives you a skill with a 10% chance on attack to deal vitality and aether damage all its own, with the opportunity to terrify a target for 2 seconds. It is incredibly useful, and scaring people to death as a Necromancer is just chef's kiss. Your mantle and your robes do not do anything special, but they do add points into Harbinger of Souls, Decomposition, and Hungering Reach, which are all abilities that you want to have big points into. That being said, the Bone Barrier was the final achievement of this set, making you impossibly more tanky. That being said, this set is very important to the build, so once you have this, the other items in your build, you can focus on doing what you'd like with them. But for the time being, that's everything that I've got for you. I hope you enjoyed the video and you got something out of this build. I highly recommend it for late game farming and big boss killing. But that's it for me, everybody. Peace out. See you next time.